Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. We are taping this podcast here as we hit the end of May. The White Sox have an off day. They sit at 18-36, 3 games better than they were a year ago when they set the record for most losses in Major League Baseball history. Maybe they're trending up. But there are good things. We've talked about them here on the podcast. We've turned the podcast over to you, the fans. We asked you, what questions do you have? And Brian Anderson and I, we're going to answer them. Of course, it all is brought to you by the Illinois Tollway. And hey, folks, a quick time out to talk about something serious. We've all said it before. If only I had slowed down. The Illinois Tollway's new campaign is called If Only, and it's a powerful reminder that speeding doesn't just put you at risk. It affects everyone on the road. Every crash leaves someone wishing they had done things differently. So take the extra time, slow down, save lives. Lives, including yours, depend on it. So what questions do you have? There's a lot of great ones, a lot of fun ones. Did you make us blush? We'll get to that and more. It's the White Sox Recap Podcast, and it starts right now. There he is, Brian Anderson, back in the flesh. Always good to see you, my friend. A lot of questions,
I'm mobile.
dude.
I'm mobile today. That's right, baby.
They call it, they back in the day, they called it on assignment, and that's what they still use sometimes in the broadcast world. So you're on assignment. We asked the fans to throw questions our way, and dude, there's a boatload. I think this is going to have to be a 2-part podcast. I've already calling it. I think it's a 2-parter.
I agree, and I did on Twitter, too. I said, whoever can make Guff blush, like $1 million and 5 gold stars.
So who's paying that $1 million? Is it you?
Cap. It's Cap's got it. When he hits 1 million followers, he's gonna dish out $100,000.
Well, I will say this for those of you who don't know, myself or Brian Anderson, it takes a lot to make the two of us blush. So I'm up for the challenge of trying to make me blush. So why don't we get started? Let's go with some baseball ones just to start. Okay, this comes from the Sockside Boys. Why is it that Will Venable often isn't prepared when it comes to getting guys up in the bullpen? Is that Katz not advising him, or is he just being stubborn? Too many times the guys have had to rush to get ready, then come on and get rocked. Your take.
Oh, man, this is a tough one. Well, I'll tell you this much. Before a series, or especially before a game, the pitching coach and managers and the bench coach will get together and kind of say who's hot, who's throwing well, who's our plus minus guy, which means like if we're getting blown out or we're up by 20 in the third or whatever, something happens, who can we have eat up some innings that don't matter? But then they got their top 3 guys, like who are we going to 7, 8, 9 or 6, 7, 8. So they know who they got. It might just be a little bit of a scramble because, they may want to just have somebody come in for one hitter. There's a multitude of reasons, but again, it's not a good look. I mean, the best I've ever seen, Don Cooper would sit there and like, I never even had to look over there. I just knew who was coming in, like 7, 8, 9. It was like Matt Thornton, Bobby Jenks, it's over. So I knew.
My answer to that is I actually would argue that the White Sox are prepared for the first time in a couple of years. It's why they're one of the better teams in the first inning in terms of scoring runs. I think this team is actually, from an execution standpoint, not from a talent standpoint, I actually think they're light years ahead of the Pedro Grifol era. In terms of the bullpen, this is what they planned for. They knew they weren't going to tie a lot of money up into bullpen volatility for a team that wasn't expected to win a lot. So they were going to bring a lot of arms in and just kind of let them figure it out. Let Ethan Katz and company figure out who goes where and when. They still don't have a closer. The only argument I'd make to the bullpen construction is, and I said this the other day, is I think they could have used a 1 year, a 1 year plus option guy that at least was a 9th inning guy that could protect a lead, because the starters have earned the right to win a few more of these games. They just don't have the experience in the back end.
Yeah, that was Mike Clevenger.
Oh, yeah, well, Jesus.
There's your answer.
Here's what I'm going to tell you, Southside boys. The White Sox are fifth in the majors in innings pitched out of their bullpen. Not a great stat you necessarily want to be in. I don't think it's lack of preparedness. I don't. It might feel like it's rushed when you're watching it on a broadcast, but to BA's point, there's so much behind the scenes we don't know. who's available, who can't pitch, who's gone one day and says, I need 2 off in order to get right again. There's a lot of guys that you think might be down there that aren't on a given day. Let's go to the next one. This is a fun one from Charlie B. Who are the everyday starters the day after the trade deadline? So let's go through this together. I'm going to not say Andrew because we don't have him right here. I'm not going to say Andrew Vaughn at first base. I'll say Miguel Vargas at first base.
Sure. But hey, real quick about Andrew Vaughn, did I miss something? I think one of the questions was like when Andrew Vaughn's done with his rehab assignment. That's like saying my drunk aunt is going on a vacation. She's going to rehab, all right. Like that's not, he's not rehabbing shit.
Yeah, fair point. This is not a rehab assignment. And I don't think this is a short stint either. I don't think they're looking for a 10-game span down in AAA to get right. I think this is something I'd be a little surprised if it was.
Hey, he goes 20 for 40 with 5 jacks. He's coming back up.
Well, just for the record, at this point, as we tape this, he's not gone 20 for 40 with 5 jacks. He does have 1, but he's been improving the last couple of at-bats. Who are the starters? So Chase Mydroth. Right now, he's been playing short a lot. I think ideally he's a second baseman to me. He's a second baseman. Keep in mind, this is after the deadline. Is Colson Montgomery up?
Yeah, I think he's got to be if he keeps swinging it like he is. But even if he does, I mean, that could be a platoon situation. If Mydroth is playing good shortstop, if he's sitting at the top of the lineup, they may not want to mess with him.
Okay, so let's just for fun say it's Mydroth at second. It's Colson at short. Who's at third?
I don't know, man. That's a rotation of your boys.
I think it's probably Lenine Sosa. It's probably Lenine Sosa. Go to the outfield. I think Benintendi could be discussed in trades, but I went through this earlier. He's owed still about $40 million after the trade deadline. You'd have to either eat a lot of that money to get a better prospect. He'd be in a package, which last year I know he was involved in some of the packages being discussed for Garrett Crochet. The White Sox don't have a guy like that, so I think Benintendi's in left.
Yeah, but if he's, I'll tell you, I agree. If he's hot and healthy, though, and there's a Dodgers type team or, Philly or whoever's in the mix and they have the money and they go, screw it, we'll eat that. We'll figure something out what Chris gets. Maybe we'll split that contract. But if they need reliability and a bat in the lineup, they'll pay for it.
These next two, I think, are interesting. Let's go right field first and skip center field. I mean, there's not somebody in AAA knocking on the door ready to come up. It's not going to be Braden Montgomery. He's coming. He's just not coming soon. So for default, my answer is going to just be, and this is going to be an interesting one because I do think there are going to be teams calling about Mike Tauchman if he's healthy.
I agree. It's another good one.
I'm going to say Mike Tauchman, but I do think if he stays healthy through June, he's an extremely high candidate to be traded.
No, I totally agree. The big one for me is just Luis Robert. It's like
we've talked
about him so much. I just don't think there's a situation where they trade him. I mean, let's just say he gets hot, like scalding hot, early July and gets his average up to 220 and he's got 9 jacks with 24 stolen bases. At that point, if I'm a general manager of another team, I'm going, you know what? He's just trying to turn it off and on. It's not enough for me to throw a major package at the White Sox.
He has 21 stolen bases as we tape this, but he's got 5 homers and 20 RBIs. He's still hitting under 200. I still think he gets traded. I do. My center fielder's not sexy. It's probably Michael A. Taylor. I don't think a team's trading for him. And if Tauchman were to be traded, I think you're looking at a combination of like Joshua Palacios and Brooks Baldwin probably gets recalled and is a plug and play type guy. There's not a lot of sexy in there except for Colson Montgomery to me, but we're not. And Kyle Teel, the other thing, I think Kyle Teal's a part of that mix too. He's part of we didn't mention catcher, Edgar Caro and Kyle Teel, I think mix and match DH and catching because I think Corey Lee gets traded.
I agree. Yeah, they gotta have Teel up here at some point. But Edgar Caro, if I'm the White Sox, I'm rolling him out there every single day. I let him DH, or depending on how his body's feeling on that day game or the getaway day, that's DH all day. If he's got a hot bat, and he can rest on the plane. He's young.
So we're not ignoring you here, Jacob, but when does Teal get the call and split time at first DH catcher with Carroll? I think it comes right around the deadline, because they already traded Matt Theis. The White Sox are in a position of strength from the catching standpoint. Very few teams are. Corey Lee, I do believe, is going to have upside for a team, assuming he's healthy the rest of the way. And then Emerson types about Chase Mydroth staying at shortstop or moving him over to second base and move Sosa over. He doesn't think Chase has the arm strength for shortstop. I do agree with that. I think long-term that Chase Mydroth's best position will be at second base. So not to skip over those two questions, but we're kind of answering a couple here at a time. Paul Riker, I have my answer. Would you trade Hagen Smith or Noah Schultz for a high-impact prospect bat?
Oh man, I already know where you're going with this. I would trade Hagen Smith for a high impact bat and another arm, maybe a veteran arm and a high impact bat that's an even swap, like a AA to a AAA, getting ready to get called up, but absolutely not with Noah Schultz. I mean, you're dealing with like a perennial mini Randy Johnson here, and I think you and I are both excited to see what he could do in a White Sox uniform.
My answer to the question, it's unique. I'm 100% with you on Noah Schultz. Noah Schultz, 41 innings pitched. He's got an ERA of 3.95. Hagen Smith, 2.10. The good thing for Hagen Smith, I was going to say the bad thing, but the good thing is that, it is the bad thing. The bad thing, and this is what has me concerned, and earlier when I asked about this, doing some background, I was told it's no big deal. Hagen Smith, as we tape this, has not made an appearance since May 10th.
And isn't he doing some like Bible study, or what's he doing? Some Bible study mid-season mission, some sort of development class? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think at some point he's getting rest. And this was 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if I love the word rest in May. So he hasn't pitched in almost 3 weeks. So to answer your question, other teams' red flags are going up too. I at this point, those two guys could be wipeout dudes, 1, 2, top of the rotation guys for years to come. They do need more high impact bats, but let's be honest, they need dudes in the staff too. They need more Braden Montgomerys. I don't think you're going to trade from a position of, you're not going to rob Peter to pay Paul in this situation. This is a question I want you to definitely answer. It's a really good one, because I was racking my brain when I saw this question come in, trying to think of an option, but I can't. Francisco Barrios Burner, have you seen a bigger in-season adjustment than the one Miguel Vargas is currently on?
No, I mean, it's been really fun to watch, and it was put on, a national spotlight when the White Sox played the Cubs, right? And nobody needed that more than Miguel Vargas, as well as the White Sox. So that's the type of stuff, Guff, that you and I have talked about the last 6 months and probably our entire friendship. It's like, you can mix and match and make trades and go get a Jim Thome or go sign a Jermaine Dye who's been playing at a high level for a long time. But eventually one of these guys in the organization is going to get called up, or he's going to say, hey, I went and put in the work this offseason, and I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor. So, it has happened before, right? There has been development at a high level. Some of these guys have come up and really showcased what they can do. And tip of the cap to this guy, because we were both kind of like, yeah, we get it. You put on 20 pounds of muscle in the offseason. Yeah. I used that one too, and then I hit 230. So, you can only do that so many times, but good for him, man. Like, that's really cool. It's amazing. I think that's something for the fans to be excited about, and he should be commended for it.
I agree. I couldn't think of one where I've seen that type of quick turnaround in season that quickly. I mean, I was with you. I mean, we were talking about him in the Andrew Vaughn, Luis Robert Jr. discussion of, here's 3 guys hitting 150. He goes, he does this hand adjustment thing, and he ends up being American League Player of the Week after dominating that weekend series against the Cubs. And he's continued. He looked really good against the Mets, a lot of extra base hits. I even went so far as saying, I think Shane Smith, as we head into June, is definitely the all-star on this team. I think Miguel Vargas is trying to be the guy in the rearview mirror that's like, hey, by the way, objects in mirror are closer than they appear.
Oh, no doubt, man. Get that Latin vote in the community too. That'd be awesome, man. Especially when it comes voting time. The Latino community, man, they do a great job of rallying behind their own. And I think that he should be commended for that. I think it'd be really great to even sneak in two of those guys. You get hot at the right time, start getting those votes going. But again, the White Sox fans have been looking for something to be excited about. So I think it's a great opportunity to maybe even sneak in one position player and one pitcher.
Anthony, so you asked if this is lightning in a bottle with Vargas, or does this feel like sustainable success? To me, it feels like sustainable success. Like we don't have to elaborate too much. I think we just talked about this. Lightning in a bottle is where you see like a 1 week stint and then it kind of reverts and goes back down. He's coming up on probably 100 plate appearances since this hand situation and just continue. I mean, that OPS is starting to get closer to the 800 mark than anything else. So to me, it looks like sustained success. I like this one from J-Con. I'm going to mix baseball and fun. Guff, how do I keep my 10-year-old son a Sox fan despite the Sox being so awful the past few years?
Do you want to take the lead on that? I grew up a Dodgers fan, so it was Dodger blue, like in my blood, like growing up. So, and I didn't care, honestly, at that age, I didn't care what their record was. I was just trying to catch home run balls and in batting practice. And hopefully Ron Peranowski would just flip me a ball as the pitching coach. So when you're 10 years old, man, that's all you give a shit about. You just want to go to a baseball game with your dad.
You nailed it right there. My answer, Jay, is take him to the ballpark as many times as you can. There's a great opportunity, obviously, for good seats. It's a great environment to take the kids. If you can't watch them on TV, and I know that's a whole other argument, but when I was a 10-year-old kid, the White Sox were like, every year they were 67 and 95, and they were my favorite teams because I never thought they were 67 and 95. They felt like they were 95 and 67. And when I'd go to Old Comiskey Park, I'd always get down there and rush to get down there where the autographs are signed. And the guys are still signing to this day. And two guys every single time, were signing. I have like 14 cards signed by these same two guys, the Pope Don Paul and Ozzie Guillen. Every single time. And Jay, that's my answer. I was 10 once as a Sox fan for teams that struggled. And then eventually they drafted some guy named Frank Thomas. And for 4 or 5 years into my teens, life was better again. I can't promise you that Frank Thomas is knocking on that door, but
oh man,
I can tell you this: kids follow great leaders. Be a great leader, and if you do that to your kid, he can continue to be a Sox fan. Maybe these painful years, just maybe, they'll pay off. Viva los Sox! How do you feel about this rebuild so far compared to the last rebuild that failed?
You know what? I think I get so burnt out. What's the word they said not to use like in college courses anymore? Like, oh, it's becoming viral, right? Or stuff like that. Yeah. I get so burnt out about the rebuild because when I think rebuild, I think, okay, when Tampa Bay was like in 06-07, right around there. They're like, hey, they're rebuilding. They're calling up Evan Longoria. They locked him up to a long-term deal. They got James Shields. They got Grant Belfort, like coming up, some of those guys coming in out of the pen. To me, like that was when they were rebuilding, but they were still really good. They're like, we're going to rebuild. We're not going to spend a bunch of money, but we also might kick your ass and make the playoffs and a wild card, right? So for me, rebuild's so tough because what are you telling the fans? Like, are you saying it's going to be 3 years, 5 years? I think nowadays with the market and how popular baseball is and the amount of money out there, I think you got about a 2-3 year window to be crappy. But if you're not pushing, like look at Detroit and Cleveland, like they were kind of that average team when we played. They were in there every year, but not really a threat. But man, these last few years, they've been up there every single year. And other than a couple players on Cleveland, you're like, who do they have that's making $1 trillion? They just have a bunch of good baseball players.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. Here's how I feel in comparison. The first one, in some ways it was smoke and mirrors because they failed to complete the original blueprint. They never they never brought in the big fish free agent guy that was originally pitched to Jerry Reinsdorf when they decided to take this thing down to the studs. This one, I've talked about this comp a lot. One took it down to the studs. This one took it down to the foundation. This one blew up the concrete and re-poured. They kept the lot, They are repouring all the concrete. It's all fresh. Obviously, that takes longer. It takes longer to settle. It takes longer to dry. Then you bring the brick guy in, et cetera. And I think that they're starting to bring the brick guy in. And I think the sustainable success, like this isn't just about top loading this thing with as many top 50 prospects as possible. Chase Meidroth was the third player in a trade that you traded an ace for. If Chase Meidroth is your everyday second baseman for 5 years and is never an all-star, is the third piece of that trade, and assuming that's a huge win.
Hell yeah.
They're covered. What you mentioned, Cleveland and Tampa, et cetera. I think those are fair comps because the Sox play down to those payrolls. Their cupboards are always full. Like,
yes,
there's always a guy down there. There's a Ryan McGuffey or Brian Anderson. And they're like, who the hell are these guys? And then they come up and they're just dudes. And I think the White Sox, I'm not saying that there are guys like Miguel Vargas is starting to, everybody's sour feelings about that trade. It's gotten a lot quieter lately because they're going, this guy might be a guy.
It might be a terrible, terrible comp because the body of work was just so good. But like, you look at a Meidroth, you're like, go find yourself a Mark Grizzolonic, man. Like, find yourself a dude that does nothing great but just freaking a Mike Lowell, right? Paul Konerko used to say all the time, he goes, BA, all Mike Lowell does is the freaking job. And so it's the best comment ever because just go out there and do your job. You can have 2 or 3 really unbelievable players, some all-stars, a couple superstars. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 guys that go out there and just do their job, I always thought I did an excellent job on defense, right? Like I always praise myself and be grateful for that and be content with that. But I used to get so frustrated because I felt like I was letting the team down on the offensive side. You know, you're never as good as you think you are, but you're never, ever as bad. But, man, I put together some longer stretches of bad at-bats, and I just feel like with Meidroth, he's going to always avoid those 0 for 20s with 10 Ks, right? He might hit 190, but he's going to walk 10 times, hit 2 doubles, and be busting his ass. So just find yourself some Mark Grizzolonics and some Mike Lowells.
Yeah, I mean, dude, and I haven't seen a White Sox player with this kind of grind approach at the plate with an on-base percentage hovering around 400 like in 15, 20 years. I mean, that's just a fact. Sox train with the record where it is. And as we tape this, they're 18-38 through 56 games, a 3-game improvement over last year. With the recent developments, have the first 2 months been a success? Crazy to say, but I think maybe it's yes. And that's from Sox Train. That's not it's crazy to say. Sox Train believes maybe it's a yes. What do you think?
Yeah. You know, we talk all the time on the podcast, offline to fans. You don't have to be good, but you have to put a product on the field that gets the fans excited. And there's a way better buzz. There's way better energy. There's a certain feel on like, hey, we might not be winning, but we're doing things the correct way. And the process and the product is a lot better.
You said it right there. And here's what I've heard. This is just what I've heard. And I've heard this from people at the White Sox. Fans were angry last year, like legitimately pissed off. And there's just like, by the way, still a lot of angry fans.
Yes, you were. You were pissed.
Still a lot of angry fans that are mad, and I get it. They have canceled season tickets, etc. But there's a lot of fans going, you know what? I'm curious. I'm going to go to a game because that guy, and that guy, I like the way they play. I like what's coming. I like this pitcher on the mound. Last year, there was none of it. It was just a bunch of misfits, and they kept losing, and you had a manager that they didn't believe in and that no one else believed in. And here's where I'll say yes to your answer, Sox Train. In 2020, like I didn't feel that way in April. I'm not going to lie to you. In April, they were 5-21. But in May, as we tape this, they're 11-15. I'm not looking to be like, oh, a losing month's a win, but that's improvement. They've looked better. They haven't just packed it in. Even if you use the Mets series for example, they should have won 2 out of 3. They don't have a back end of the bullpen. They don't have it. But there's things coming, and there's just the way they play the game. The first inning runs, the preparation. I see it. It's I don't know if I'm going to call this season a success in 2 months, but I will say I like where things are going thus far.
Hey, 63 wins, you'll be doing cartwheels, man.
Hey, 53, I think I'll take. Sox supporter, I'll take care of this one. It's going to be brief. Any update on the Ishbia brothers buying the White Sox? The White Sox are not for sale, okay? Justin Ishbia bought up a lot of the minority shareholds. to increase his stake in the game, backed out of the Minnesota Twins majority ownership, which would tell you there's a quote-unquote handshake agreement that if and when it comes time that Jerry Reinsdorf will sell, or, God forbid something happens and that becomes part of the solution, then I think that's when you'll see that. As for now, there is zero plan for Jerry Reinsdorf to sell the White Sox right now. When that becomes available, we'll let you know. Yeah.
I went and saw my buddy Benji Pikovsky the other day, right? Good friend of mine. And he had a lot of pep in his step, and I could have sworn I saw $100 bills just flailing out of his pockets. So I don't know if the Ishbias maybe bought the majority share of his family's stake. His father, Larry, got in as one of the original investors. But yep. I felt like he either had childbearing hips or he had about 4 trillion hundreds in each pocket.
Maybe both. It's probably trying to get Mike Clevenger back to Chicago as well. That's right. That's not a shot, Benji. I love you, Benji. This one's a fun one from my guy, Reese Johnson. This guy's the best. This one's fun. Who wins a 3-team scramble? And I'm assuming he's talking golf here. Who wins a 3-team scramble between the duos of Guff and BA, Chuck and Ozzie, or Cap and, let's say, Jurko? So he's breaking us apart from Cap. It's you and me, Chuck and Ozzie, Cap and Jurko. I've golfed with 3 of the 4. You're the only one. I did not golf with Jurko. I've not golfed with BA. I've golfed with Chuck, Ozzie, and Cap. So 60% of these guys I've golfed with. I have my answer. I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
You know what? Check this out. So if we play 18 and we go best ball, you and I might get off the tee box once or twice, just, while horseshoe up my ass, get off the tee box down the fairway, right? But we're playing Guff's ball 16 out of 18 holes. But you get me within 200 yards of that cup, and you start letting me hammer that 7-iron down to like a wedge and a chip and a putt. I mean, we're torching Chuck and Cap all day.
So here's what's fun. Here's how I'm going to answer this question. Cap, I think, is going to be most, even though him and Jurko are close and would be like all in on just trying to win. I think he'd have a little FOMO because he's like, well, man, Chuck and Ozzie would definitely be dialed. They're the best. They're the favorite to win this. There's no doubt in my mind. They are by far the most 2 consistent, stable golfers, even keeled, that I've probably been around. Cap's pretty damn good too.
Yeah, I suck. So I'm just.
I will tell you right now. Here, I'm going to flip the question back to Reese and say, which duo would you rather hang with?
That's right. Who is the cart girl? Who is the cart girl going to visit the most? And also probably comp the most drinks to. Answers Guff and BA.
So Katie's definitely going to take care of us.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you. Appreciate you.
So yeah, Katie. Well, yeah. This is not about who. Winning comes in different forms, Reese. Okay, so I appreciate the question, but I'm just telling you that's how I feel. Put the scorecard. You can hang a star on their scorecard, but you're going to hang a star.
We're going to have the best time. We'll finish the quickest because we'll probably bow out at like the 13th hole and go to the clubhouse and treat ourselves.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm a big people make the party guy, so I feel just fine about my duo. This is from Welcome Matt. What on God's green earth makes you think this rebuild will be as successful and not just another clown show? I'll hang up and listen for my answer.
Go ahead.
My answer is kind of going back to what I already referred to. I think I have more belief in how it's being done than the parts that are being shown right now, if that makes any sense. I think the process is more thought out and actually being allowed in terms from behind the scenes. Behind the scenes don't equate to W's. I like the manager hire a lot better. And the insular part of the old regime, meaning it was Kenny here since his playing days, Rick was here since 2000, 2001, and all of the White Sox way that we were hearing it's not necessarily gone because Chris Getz is a White Sox guy. But I've mentioned all of the outside influences and voices that have been hired as a part of this from other organizations. Bannister being a big part of that, and the pitching staff from the Giants organization. We know about Barfield from Arizona. There obviously are a couple guys from the Royals. There's just more being done and more input being taken from other departments to try to make this thing get right. I'm more curious. Here's the only part, welcome, Matt, that I'll say. When it comes time to add in a financial way to complement the prospects that we're hoping are going to be here and be good, will that happen? Get set right here, right where I'm sitting. When I asked him, will it be a $100 million player? He said, I think so. No, I think so. And he said, yes, that he will sign a 9-figure player. So, look, $100 million player is not a big deal anymore because there's guys getting $700
Holy
million.
cow. Shoot, I know.
But so that's the only thing I'll say is, like, I'll throw caution to that, but I do like the process better.
Same. I just get more specific. If I'm an outsider, if I'm looking in at this based off what I know and the people I know in place, Getsy's been kind of groomed in season, under, Dayton Moore over in Kansas City, who got a nice couple years, like really, really strong years that he learned from. And Getsy was right there. You got Will Venable in place. Katsy's doing a great job. They got Banny and Barfield, who have like the big league pedigrees. Their father was both great Major League Baseball players. And then, lastly, you got some really young, talented players coming up. You got Wilco and Montgomery, both Montgomerys, and then you got the pitching staff. You got Schultz and Hagen Smith. Those guys right there, that handful of guys should be enough to get any White Sox fan really excited.
No doubt. A couple more here before we sign off on this one. Justin Velasco, are you excited for the future? I think Brian just answered that. Which prospect coming up are you most excited for? Quickest answer.
George Wilco. For me, that kid's going to be crazy.
I like Braden Montgomery. Who do you want the Sox to draft? Okay, A, outfielders and infielders in the first few rounds. B, go with pitchers first, then heavy on players from round 2 or position players 2 through 3. C, outfielders. D, other. You know what I want, Justin? Dudes. So I don't care. I got
dudes. One for you.
Okay.
I got one for you.
All right.
University of Arizona, there's 2 absolute units right now. There's a center fielder, right fielder named Brendan Summerhill. Last name Summerhill. He plays outfield. He's a Chicago kid, born and raised in the heart of Chicago. Supposed to be a first-round pick. Unbelievable bat. And there's just a couple other players too, like, Mason White, shortstop, second baseman, is second all-time. He's like 5'9", second all-time in home runs at University of Arizona. Just hits absolute tanks from the left side. Just a powerful meatball, man, and can really, really play baseball. So those are 2 guys I'd like to see them draft.
Look at that insight, folks. There you go, Justin. I'm all co-sign, please. Co-sign. Baseball tossed. Hot take. If the White Sox sign free agents and Schultz and Hagen are up next year, along with Teal Colson and Braden Montgomery, we win 70-ish games and then are a second-place team in 27 and a playoff contender in 28.
Hey, tell Chris Getz Jr. relax over there.
we found Getsy's burner account.
Yeah. Easy, Getsy.
Hey, Presley Redman wants to know, you're the one, other than a Foster family here. Where did Matt Foster go? He appeared briefly last year after Tommy John, but don't see him anywhere now. So I did the homework for you. He is currently playing in the Mexican League for Algodoneros de Union Laguna.
Yeah, Ozzie used to coach down there, so there you go. And I don't even know who that guy is, so hang with him.
Matt Foster, I think his days with the White Sox are done. Our last one for this podcast, and I hate predicting success, but the question's too funny. And for those of you who know me that have dogged Eloy Jimenez for the last year plus, I had to end with this one. Shy Sox Billy, who's a fan of the program, if any of the big prospects are going to replicate an Eloy career, who is most likely to and why?
Luis Robert. Next question.
Wow.
I mean, dude, it's okay to pull a BA, hit 230 and play like lights out center field, but don't steal 50 bags and hit 5 homers. You've only been on base 53 times. Get on. You need to hit 280 with 40 pumps and 100 ribbies, dude, or else give us your money back.
All right, so Shy Sox Billy, I'm assuming you're talking about big prospects to come, and here's how I'm going to answer that. I think it's a good answer that BA just gave because he's definitely the most notable that looks like failure. Well, he is failure, let's be honest. I'm saying none, and here's why. You asked for likely to and why. I'm saying none because I think, and I'll say this, I've been on record with saying it, and I know Moncada comes up a lot. I think Eloy is the biggest disappointment in the history of the franchise.
Jeez.
I do.
Tough.
It is tough. You know why? Because this guy was supposed to fall into 30 every year for 5 to 8 years.
I mean, just you're supposed to fall into like Abreu set the tone, and I think he laid the groundwork for him. And the fact he was showing signs of Abreu inside of him, and then he just decided to bail out on every time his calf was sore.
Yeah, and you know what? I know about the rehab that wasn't done when he was playing or when he was hurt. And then I got all this show. I said this he gets traded to Baltimore, and all these people from the Birdland hashtag are hammering me out of the gate when he's hitting like 400 with slap singles the other way. And you know what he finished in Baltimore last year for the 33 games he played?
203.
He was 232. His OPS was 586, which was lower than with the White Sox. He's not who he is. It's why he has not appeared in a major league game. He's out with Achilles tendonitis right now in the minor leagues. Folks, Shy Sox Billy, the answer is nobody, because I don't see another player with that ceiling, with that promise, with the coming up, hi mom, the silver slugger, and then all the injuries and the BS that followed it. Extremely disappointing. So if anybody replicates that, shame on them, because I do feel some of this was self-inflicted. I really do. Done. That's a wrap. These are really good questions, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna get fired. I get too caught up in this podcast. I love it so much.
All right. I think we're going to do another one of these. We have a boatload more of questions that we did not get to. And if you want to keep them coming, hit me up on X, hit BA up on X, and continue the questions, because there's going to be plenty more to come throughout the season. BA, appreciate this. Really good stuff, my friend. You can go not get fired. I'm going to do the Illinois Tollway read, because they are proud partners of this fine podcast. We appreciate you. And this has been always been a really fun thing to do, to turn it over to the fans.
Yeah, tell Cap, send those bags of cash. Remember, make those checks out to cash.
Cash, it's just as good as money, that they always say. Quick time out to talk about something serious. We've all said it before. If I had only slowed down. The Illinois Tollway's new campaign is called If Only, and it's a very powerful reminder that speeding doesn't just put you at risk. It affects everyone on the road. Every crash leaves someone wishing they had done things differently. So take the extra time. Slow down. Save lives. Lives, including yours, depend on it. For BA, for everyone here at the Recap, thanks for watching the White Sox Recap Podcast, brought to you by the Illinois Tollway here on YouTube and wherever you download and subscribe to your audio podcast. That puts a bow on this edition. We'll see you next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast.